Hello and welcome back to Invictus. Today I want to talk to you about our dwarves. So, jumping in quickly, remember that none of our genos have like special bonuses that make them better at being one class or another. We don't want that sort of bioessentialism. Our dwarves in our setting are proud and hardy people. They're quick to take on new challenges and they persist long after others have quit. Dwarven society values completion, and they also have many building projects that take generations to finish. Right, these are our people that start something and they finish it. So, what does playing a dwarf look like for you? Well, first things first, dwarves are short, right? Dwarves are shorter than your sort of average human with 48 inches. You add 2d6 to that to see where you're going. So, a really tall dwarf might get to 5 foot, but that's a pretty tall dwarf. And this has an impact on their movement, right? So normal movement, right, is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Dwarves begin to lose a little bit in that movement. They can't sprint as far as like your average human would in the same amount of time. And what do they get for that? Well, they gain a little bit to their reflexes score. In this setting, we decided everything has to have a payoff. So if I make you a little bit shorter, that must mean you've got some advantage. We've decided that advantage is reflexes. Dwarves are also built differently than humans. They have a stout build. That means they can take a lot more abuse. And we reflect this in the fact that they have 3 rows of light wounds. So if you remember from our combat video, right, most groups have 2 rows of light wounds. Dwarves get an extra third one. So if you've got a strong dwarf, that dwarf can take a ton of punishment before they're finally taken down in combat. However, being stout has a cost. And that means that they're a little bit less agile. All dwarves are a little bit hot under the collar sometimes, so they've got a -1 to their composure score, but a benefit they gain from that is they gain +1 to their fortitude or +1 to their willpower. And again, that's your choice. So let's talk about some of the other magical benefits that dwarves have. So here we see all dwarves have the ability to resist poison. So anytime you ingest something or you're hit with a weapon that's got a venom on it, you get a +3 to all those poison and venom checks. It's not going to keep you safe from everything, but it sure does make a difference. And with that +3, remember we've got degrees of success on everything that we do. So if you fail critically, that's when the poison or venom is going to have a much stronger effect in you. It's much less likely that dwarves are going to fall into that category with this +3 check. So dwarves are always going to have some innate resistance to poison, even if they do fail that roll. All right. So what else can dwarves do? Dwarves are resilient. So remember in this game, as you take damage, you gain wound penalties. As you take damage, as you're fighting, you gain fatigue. And if you get too much of that, you will get a condition called exhaustion. Well, dwarves are resilient. They can spend one of their tenacity to shrug off all of these effects. They can say, I don't have any wound penalties for the next 10 minutes. I don't have any fatigue for the next 10 minutes. All that stuff is gone. Even if you're bleeding, right? So the dwarf is still bleeding, but their physiology is so tough, they just say, nope, I'm not worrying about that for the next 10 minutes. So dwarves are tough. And we wanted that to really feel that way when you're in combat playing. So if you go back and you look at our live play, you'll see that when someone takes a lot of damage, like they're in trouble quickly. Dwarves have the sense to say, nope, I'm sticking around. What else can dwarves do? Well, dwarves have an ability called stone sense. And that is when they're in contact with solid stone, they can, in essence, extend their perception through that stone and get a sense of what's around them. This gives them a benefit on perception checks. It also gives them a benefit on stealth checks, right? Because they've bonded with the stone, they can move a little bit more quietly. They get a boon to crafting checks. If you're on stone and you're doing some kind of crafting work, it's better because you're in tune with this stone. It also gives them a bonus to arcana checks, right? They're drawing the wisdom of the stone into what they're doing. And if they put their faith in it, they get a bonus to their theurgy checks. Dwarves also gain a bonus to their fortitude saves and resists when they're in contact with stone. So if you go into a dwarven stronghold and you attack them, you'd better be ready. Because not only are they naturally more resilient than other genos, but if they use their stone sense, they are much more likely to gain all these extra benefits. Don't try to sneak into them either, because the stone talks to them. The stone tells them. So they actually get a sense and a bonus to detecting invisible creatures as well. Watch out for those dwarves. They build those strongholds for a reason. So this actually touches on a major design philosophy for Invictus. We didn't want to just say, like, dwarves do this. And you say, oh, okay, I guess that's what they do. Why did dwarves do this? Well, dwarves get this huge benefit to living in and around stone. So if you're a Genos and your god has given you this ability, what are you going to do with it? You're going to build dwarven strongholds. So that's what they did. And that's why they did it, because they have this huge benefit for being in contact with stone. But this isn't just the dwarven stronghold. It isn't just the mountain. It also extends to castles, because if you build your floor with stone, even if cut brick, it's not as good as the dwarven places, but you still get a benefit for that as well. Now, let's talk for a minute about what we don't see. There is no dark vision. There is no infravision. There is no ultravision. Right? Not that dwarves ever had that, but we hate dark vision. Right? Dark vision is one of these things that just drives us bonkers. And I'm not going to rant too long about it, but it's not here. However, what dwarves can do is they can use their dwarven sense to get an idea if others are around. So if you're a dwarf and you're entering into a cavern, you can say, hey, I'm going to activate my stone sense, and I'm going to find out whether there's anyone within about 100 feet of me, about 30 meters of me. And you might say, but wait a minute, isn't that just dark vision under another name? Well, the answer is no, because dark vision is always on. Dark vision is always active. The moment that torch goes out, the moment that darkness spell is cast, dark vision works. I have dark vision. That's not how this works, right? In this case, the dwarf has to stop. They have to take a moment. They have to open up their senses to the wider Lithosa, right? Lithosa is our sense for the spirit of the stone, okay? And so there is no instantaneous boom, boom, boom. Plus, this costs a daring, all right? Dwarves are generally going to have somewhere between 3 and 7 daring. And you don't get this all back in a long rest. In a long rest, you might get 1, maybe 2 daring back. So as you use your daring to activate stone sense, as you use your daring to get a sense of what's going on around you, it has a real cost that could take you days to recuperate. So what does that mean? Dwarves are going to use torches, right? They're going to use torches just like everyone else. Now, why do we care about torches? And I know I'm off on a tangent here, but why do we care about torches? We care about torches because it takes a hand to hold them, right? It takes a hand to hold the torch, and therefore you either have a sword and a torch and no shield, or you have a shield and a torch but no sword, and you're vulnerable, right? If you're going to do dungeon crawling, if you're going to go underground, there should be a sense of vulnerability. There should be the sense of terror. And that's what we're trying to build into this from just a systematic point of view. All right. So if this is your first time, you may not have seen our Banes. Banes are basically a curse that all the Genos got at some point in the past by the Forgotten One. And so as you're making your dwarven character, you're going to roll a d6 to decide which of these Banes can take effect on you. So the first one is greed, right? This is pretty stereotypical. The idea that dwarves get obsessed with wealth and they want to hide it in their underground palaces and whatnot. Well, your dwarf might be affected by greed. And so when your Bane triggers, you might become obsessed with wealth and have a really hard time dealing with it. It doesn't mean you're running around the whole time. This is not a role-playing characteristic. This is not saying, your dwarf Thorgrim is always greedy and wants money always. No. This is something that happens to you during play. Anytime you get a certain amount of fatigue, there's a chance that this Bane can take over. So this is definitely a downside. This is a bad thing to happen. This is not character personality. Another one is stubbornness, right? If you were asked to describe dwarves, I don't know how many people wouldn't use the word stubborn or hard-headed or something like that. Well, your dwarf might have the Bane of stubbornness, or they might become very suspicious. And Banes are a really interesting way of adding role-playing dynamics to this, to say, basically everybody has a bad day, everyone reaches their limit, and things happen. Right? In the magical land of role-playing, often you get 5 people traveling around together. They drive in a car everywhere together. Everything's perfect all the time. They're never unhappy. Have you ever gone on a group trip with people? Don't you just love those moments in which you're not all standing together? Well, in a role-playing game, somehow that urge is gone. And I don't like that. I want there to be some inner party dynamics. You're all on the same team. Everyone's working together. But I want there to be inner party dynamics. And Banes are a way that we get to add that in. Okay. So that's our quick look at the Dwarves today. This is all, early playtest material. We're just about to release this in our player creation pack. So you'll get to see this and build your own character. We'll add a lot more, but we just wanted to get this in front of you so you can start working with it now. Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate you checking out the channel. And if you want to learn more, remember, go to that Discord down below. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye for now.